two podcasts. I don't want to have one split and become one and two, and then two. But like one shouldn't stay at one.
Okay.
There should be
Hello. Can everybody hear us on stream? Can someone go and check YouTube outside of this room? And let's say hi. So maybe someone writes on it's like a 2-minute delay. Okay. That should be. Okay. I don't even know. Yeah, they can hear me. Okay, so hi everybody, and welcome to tonight's our first meetup of the year. PyLadies Hamburg, Happy New Year. We are also streaming, and we start. So we are today PyLadies Hamburg and PyLadies Amsterdam, and okay, so we have like the community announcements. So PyLadies is a community, an international mentorship group with the focus on helping more women become active participants and leaders in the Python open source community. And there we have, I think, with PyLadies has over 250 chapters. So if you ever need a woman speaker or a speaker from an underrepresented group to give a talk at your conference, you know where to find us. So don't say you didn't find it. Anyways, so we have a Slack channel where you can join, slack.pyladies.com. You can join it, and then we have there a City Hamburg channel. So if you join Slack, you see news about jobs and learning stuff and events, local and international, and all sorts of opportunities to connect with others. But most importantly, we have a couple of codes of conduct that we follow in PyLadies Hamburg. By participating at the event today, we expect you to abide by the Lady Nerds Code of Conduct. And we are dedicated to providing a safe and inclusive, welcoming and harassment-free space and experience for all members and guests, regardless of gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, socioeconomic status, body size, ethnicity, nationality, level of experience, age, religion, or lack thereof. And if anybody feels that something is happening to them, please either reach out to me or to Anne-Marie, who is in the room. If anybody, we are also going to monitor the comments online, and if anybody posts offensive stuff, we are going to remove them from YouTube. We can do that, no worries. And yeah, so as this is a live event, if something is happening, we will not have really time to investigate it, and we will ask the offending person to leave the room. And so that's that. Okay, so we always have the question, can men attend? And of course, everyone is welcome. And if you identify as someone well represented in open source and in tech, please be mindful of the space and privileges you have and use it to support others. And some announcements. There are some conferences. The call for proposals have closed. So PyCon Germany was last week, and also PyCon Italy. But we have EuroPython with the deadline on 27th of January. So if you want to give a talk about what you do at work day to day, don't say that you don't do anything interesting, because you'll be surprised. There's plenty of people who can learn from what you do day to day at work. So there's EuroPython, and then there's PyCon Austria with the deadline in March, which also you can go. And all of these conferences have financial aid. So even if your company is not paying for your trip, you can apply for financial aid. Usually that covers transport, accommodation, and conference ticket. Now, if you want to give a talk or your company would like to host us, reach out to us. You can reach to us out on Slack. You can see on LinkedIn and via email or on our website. And today we have Una Galyeva from Amsterdam, who is going to talk about evaluating LLM-based applications. And it's actually a hands-on workshop. Of course, you can watch it, but you will probably get more out of it if you participate, because there's going to be time to. And if you don't have a laptop and you want to participate and you're in the room today, maybe look for someone that has a laptop, be nice to the person, smile, and maybe sit next to a person that has a laptop. And the people with laptops, of course, be friendly. And who knows, maybe the person sitting next to you has an amazing idea that helps you solve the challenges of today. And if you didn't get the repo, so you can scan the QR code to get the repo, but the repo is also either on Luma or on Meetup, where you saw the requirements, we added the link to the repo. So you can also get it from the page where you signed up for today. And I forgot to put the microphone next to my face, so I hope the sound was fine. And I am, by the way, Teresa, one of the PyLadies Hamburg organizers. Right, we don't have it yet totally announced, but in March we're going to have the next meetup, and it's going to be a panel with really cool guests. And I think what was the topic? Something about how the whole LLM and the AI revolution is affecting our jobs and our careers. So I can hear myself very well. YouTube is
That's great.
all good. Okay, so we will be posting the link to the repo again, I hope. We can post it on YouTube, and I will post it on the other one, and then otherwise everybody can say hi to Una. So I will do a little bit of something. Just a second, we'll be right back.
Okay, just give me a second. I think it should be zoom out, right? No, it's not for this, for this.
Command plus.
I want to make it bigger.
Yeah, command plus.
Command plus. Command plus. Yeah, I think that would be better. Check on the stream because sometimes it's too tiny.
Yeah, we will ask here. I will ask.
Okay. So we going.
Your sound is on.
Okay. Check, check. Yep. Just let me know.
Okay. So just ask over there if everybody can hear you.
Yeah, just let me know if you can hear me, but then let me know if they can hear me. Because I don't check.
There's another yes, thumbs up.
Another yes, Thomas. Okay, good. Okay, then let's start. So for those who are watching us online, just want to add all information that today's I was presenting. It's also related to PyLadies Amsterdam. So we also have our own channel on Global PyLadies Slack. Of course, hosting is not so much relevant because we are in Hamburg and not in Amsterdam right now. Yeah, fantastic, thanks. So just in case you're interested, giving a workshop online, for example, or you're open to go and attend Amsterdam, visit Amsterdam. So, you're free to do that. So just in this case, reach out to me and we can discuss that. Okay, so what we're gonna do next, let's say 2 hours. So we start with the workshop part. This part is streamed right now, which means I guess it would be records. Yes, fantastic. At the end of that. And then we're gonna shut down the streaming part, and then it will be like networking, communication questions, whatever. So what I want to start with, I need a little bit of energy in the room. So I would like to ask you to stand up. Please stand up. Like I'm feeling myself like in 90s. Yeah. So I'm going to give you, so those who are watching us online, it's also a nice exercise for you. So feel free to also follow us. So I'm going to give you a statement. If the statement is true, basically you'll keep standing. If the statement is false, you're sitting, right? But the thing is, it doesn't mean that if you sit down, you're not allowed to stand up again, okay? Just like remember, false, you're sitting, true, you're standing, good? Okay, so the first thing, I'm talking from, like not talking from the third person, talking, let's say, from myself. So I used any LLM as a user, whether it's ChatGPT, Midjourney to generate images, whatever. Okay, fantastic. So great. So we already have at least someone who didn't try it. Maybe you tried, but you was not aware about that because it was just integrated somewhere. Okay, good. Next thing, so you built a shiny POC like in 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever, like, and you demoed this POC to someone, whether POC was proof of concept, sorry, you were calling any third-party APIs that provide in LLM services. Okay, good. Fantastic, thanks. Okay, next question. So let's say you built something, and that's something you built, which using LLM for one of the features, or for all the features, or a bunch of LLMs, or there is more complexity to it. We can just throw everything like racks, agents, whatever. You build it, and it's running in production right now. Okay. Then it's really good that you're here, because my goal today is just give you the direction. Disclaimer, there is no one framework that fits all. There is no one strategy that you have to follow and to give results, because as soon as LLM were introduced, or as we call them in general, foundational models were introduced, they open up just like a Pandora box of opportunities. And pay attention, I'm saying deliberately Pandora box, because from one side, it's brought so many fantastic things that you can build, things that were literally unthinkable before. At the other side, if it was so easy to run it in a production grade, then why we're still struggling? And it's okay to struggle. So by literally learning from each other, sharing, guiding towards, let's say, the better solutions, that's, let's say, what we want to achieve. So I didn't make slides. I was just too lazy. Sorry, I put everything just in the notebook. The goal is not to read all lines in the notebook right now. You can go for it later. So I will briefly introduce to you some of the concepts, namely evolution-driven development, how the architecture of, let's say, application built with the usage of LLM can look like. And then we're going to go and what is evaluation framework and how you can start to build it. So to make this workshop accessible to everyone, so you don't spend your money on doing specific API calls, we are working with a toy set, and we're working like with a simulation scenario, which means none of the calls is pretended to be done today. But there are some things that you can investigate more. I provided like all links at the end of the notebook, so you can go and try it out for yourself. So yeah, without further ado, I think we can start. I already started. So I'm Una. I'm half Ukrainian, half Dutch. So I'm living in Amsterdam for many, many years now. And I also like running PyLadies Amsterdam for more than 6 years for now, where our focus mostly, let's say, doing workshops on different topics. Unfortunately or fortunately, the latest year we started going more with the flow, and we started more, let's say, gravitating towards AI questions, data engineering for AI, machine learning engineering, and there are others, like different topics. So we went a little bit far away from like standard web development with Django, and we went more into the direction of let's do something like that. Yeah, in total, many years, try different things. I guess it's probably hard to try to find, oh no, I never was a data scientist, that's one thing for sure. But I was like working with data scientists a lot, or as a data engineer, or as a machine learning engineer, or as an AI engineer, or MLOps engineer, whatever you call it. I usually say you can call me Susie if it makes you happy, you know? So let's go into the what's the difference, basically. What is the biggest difference between standard software development process when you need to build an app versus, and I'm sorry, I'm still keep using the word app. What do I mean by that? Any type of application with user interface, when user can ask something, basically creating queries, then magically some magic happens and the output you get response to the user. So it could be mobile app, web app, whatever, you name it. So when you doing it like in a traditional way, you have design phase, you have, okay, then we go and try into something, we define specific like scope, what we try to build, then specific testing framework for it. There are some more hardcore people, for example, who prefer test-driven development, when instead of starting writing code, first you think about test cases, you write test, then you write code. The goal is to break basically this test, and by improving the test suite, you're improving the code. And then it's more or less clear what you're going to evaluate. It's more or less clear what to test. Of course, there will be always edge cases, for sure, but it's more or less clear. So you can at least predict how this looks like, what we can do. So when we went into this like deep, dark water of developing, let's say, AI-powered apps, we learned a really interesting thing. Apparently, monitoring is not as straightforward, and testing is not as straightforward as before, because you have piece of code that you need to test. You need also to make sure that the data are not changing, the incoming data, so input, and you also may need basically be sure that the output is not changing as well. Or if it's changing, you know why it's changing. And the output could be because of something happened with code, some like nasty bug, some features are not computed properly, whatever, something happened in the background, whether it's, again, data changed. Let's say before COVID, you built an application, predicting number of cargo containers coming, for example, from China. COVID started, boom, you get 0, but your models still keep predicting that the containers coming. When talking about containers, I'm talking about physical one, not the other one. So, and that shifted the perspective. But then when the word of, let's say, foundational models came up to us, so it's basically very powerful algorithms trained on a tremendous amount of data, basically all information scraped from internet with permission or without permission. And then apparently it's so easy to use it right now. So you don't need to build, don't need to train anything on your own. You just can go to any providers that offering this. You just basically do an API calls, it's magic, and it's working for you. So the bar to start building something dropped drastically, which means if you don't have any data of AI capabilities in-house, you still can do that, because you can just do an API calls and that's it. And that's where the problem started to pop up, because in the majority of the cases, you're working with text. Of course, it could be let's say, multi-format input, like images, text, like pictures or videos, audio, whatever. But in the majority of the cases, if we're talking about, let's say, LLM-based app, we think that user has some kind of input, which is query, that user sends to our system, that magic happens, and then the output, the response coming back to user. So what was noticed that it's really, really hard to test, really hard to test. When I just started doing that, let's say 2 years ago, that was the first time when I basically stopped doing like poking and just, the rubber hit the ground. So we need to deploy this poking now. So the money, the time is ticking, let's see the result. I was hungry to search for more answers, like what are the real use cases? What are the companies that already did it? Like what they learned from it? I really need to see like the reality of it. And then my first question was, okay, how are we going to evaluate that? Like, because it's so tremendous, it's so huge. And then everyone's like, oh, just fine, you just use LLM as a judge. So it's basically you are evaluating the output or intermediate steps with another LLM. So basically you're doing another API calls. And they work, we call it LLM as a judge. So it's basically judge the output. And that's it. So you have like AI that tests AI. And then you're supposed to get something meaningful at the end. By the way, it's not a problem. It's also work if you do it, let's say, in a specific guided way. But this is not only one solution. If you're on a limited budget, if you don't have infra to host, for example, your own, let's say your own, the models that you get from the internet, the open source models, then you still need to do something. So that's where the new, let's say, paradigm, which some of them say we invented it, and other companies claim we invented that, which is basically called evaluation-driven development, is starting to, let's say, to get, I need to remember how to use Mac, sorry, get into the picture. And this, I can do it a way smaller. If I can just pull it, yes. I don't want to close it. I need help. Just to lower down the bar. Yes, that. Oh, magic. Thanks a lot.
By the way,
Yeah?
this area of the screen is covered by your name, so
Okay.
don't put anything valuable.
Okay. So basically the whole idea is, remember test-driven development, you start with a test, you have a bunch of tests, and then from this test you're moving forward. In this case, it's almost like the same, but instead of the tests, you're starting with some kind of evaluation suite. It's like your rough idea about what you want to evaluate on, and from that, you would need some way to express this evaluation in such a way that they could be partially automated. So it's not only, let's say, human eyeballing, it's also important. And I will keep saying that you have to look at the output. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen, sorry. So here we start the same way, gather requirements, no difference with traditional development. You build in testing POC with stakeholders, like nothing special here as well. And then comes the interesting part. Then comes this constant iterative process when you need to start with the evaluation. And these evaluations would be translated into the test suite or test suites, depends on what you want to do. And it's going to help you to progress a way quicker. It's going to literally calm you down a bit. And it's also let you, sleep during the night, because when another colleague decided to, for example, use another version of, let's say, the same model that you were using before, or the model was deprecated, so it means that not the whole process would be crushed. And that's what we're going to basically do today. We will start with, this is how to start with your evaluation test suite, evaluations, then how to translate this evaluations from ad hoc analysis, looking at some numbers, looking at some graph, trying to make some meaning out of it, go into the, okay, this is the test suite, this is how test suite could look like, this type of the test that you can use for that. And then we go with the most difficult part, which is observability, but we're going to get back at the end. One important piece, the observability, we're not going to play around today with it, because indeed it requires, again, some OpenAI calls, but I will point you in the right direction. So in a nutshell, the whole concept of evaluation-driven development, it means that comparison to traditional software, you have the same steps, but they are more expanded, and the iteration circle happen on the almost each step. So it's like constantly, I don't like this Ouroboros, like the snake that eats tail and is going like this constantly. So different sides. Another thing, so it's pretty much a big picture. So the challenge of the majority of the applications that you're going to build using LLMs would be in the complexity of it. Because the more components you bring, the more robust and the more, let's say, efficient, so the more trustworthy your system you want to build, the more steps would be added. And here we see we're not talking about exposing it to any external users. We're talking about starting something small, building something internally for the company, when you still can do a little bit of red teaming, a little bit of security testing. But I mean, it's not the main attention moment at this time, but at least like you're going somewhere. And if we're talking about exposing it to the customers, that comes a lot of challenges associated with that. Because the majority of the things that you can manipulate, it would be your input. So all the works, what we're going to do, it's basically improving the input. Input starts with writing a prompt. It's like a set of instructions that you're given. It's natural language, like human readable text. And then this set of instructions would be further and further and further expanded by adding context. If you want, for example, make sure that, let's say, your LLM is aware about the internal documents your company have. The documents could come in different formats. And then if you want as well, add some actions that you can do. For example, I don't know, like schedule a meeting or like check whether like the version of the document is updated, something like this. So the more complex it began, the more complex it is, the more harder it became. And the more clear it becomes that without proper evaluation, you will be doomed. Like you will not be moving forward, because each tiny change in the input prompt, whether it's change of the model that you're calling, there are some hidden symbols in the prompt, anything that change gonna basically as a domino effect affect your application. So there comes a lot of question about what to evaluate, how to evaluate. I added some information, you can read it later. But one thing that I want to point your attention to, the difficult questions is usually how to convince stakeholders, like what we can do about that. Of course, we get some time to, whether it's innovation team, whether it's like whatever you call it team, what we can do about that. So what are the options? And they usually say, yeah, but like we don't have time to create proper evaluation framework or just a POC. The thing is, if it's POC without 0 evaluations, it will remain POC forever. So usually if you build POC, then stakeholders want you to progress as quickly as possible. Like, we need to go in production. We need to prove, I don't know, to the upper stakeholders that it's working, that it's worth investments, or we're gonna cut the costs, or we're gonna, like, I don't know, like open up new markets, whatever it is. Or it's always about money, but it's about or reducing or, let's say, repurposing our goals, whatever. But it's always come down to money, people, resources, time that you have available for that. So without evaluation framework, unfortunately, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's, let's say, the biggest, let's say, message that I want to share with you. So what we're going to do, we're going to try first different types of evaluations. And we're going to start with the simplest evaluations possible. And then we're going to expand, because we can, of course, always start with, let's use another model to judge how our model is working. But the challenge is here that if we don't have budget, if we don't have time, if we don't know how to do, what are the low-hanging fruits, how we can start, what are the smaller steps that we can run? And especially if I just, in a development workflow, what can I do? Like, what type of test I can run with each commit? Because if I'm going to run, let's say, expensive test, nobody going to allow me, to develop further. So basically it goes to that. And the whole idea of every evaluation framework, it will be always your domain and your specific context bounded by. Because we start in here working with use case, which is internal company. So it's a Q&A system where people of the company employees can ask some questions. Questions about some HR, finance, whatever, and then they get answers from the systems. And then together with stakeholders, you define specific, let's say, requirements, define specific capabilities. That's what you're gonna, let's say, build. And you come up with this fantastic list of questions, and we can look at it. It says answers must be correct. I'm sorry, but what does it mean, correct? Like, how do you know? If you've never worked in this field, if you never seen at least a sample of data, how the requests and responses looks like what does it mean for you as a developer to have correct answers? Another one, answers must be helpful, complete, and relevant. Again, what is the definition of helpfulness? What is helpful for you? What is helpful for me? So all these definitions, they are really, really high abstractions. So without proper understanding of your domain, of your product, what you're doing, it would be really, really hard to judge. And then you go, answer tone must be professional. Okay, somehow you can go to it and make sure, okay, there are, for example, specific words are not allowed to be used. Or I don't know, we are not allowed to answer questions about competitors. What if person asks why I'm earning this amount of money and that company I can earn that? What you can do about that? Probably we don't want that our, let's say, Q&A system gives such type of answers to our employees. And then it says, okay, format less than 100 words. Probably it's some UI limitations that we have, so that should be the answer for some specific reason. And then comes interesting part. Must include the link to the source. So basically, if a person asks a question, and if it's simple question, our expectations, it returns like short answer, like a summary, and then link to the document that the person can further work with. But the question is there is a possibility the person can have access to that or not. So it's like, as you see, from one side, we have like clear requirements. They are terribly unclear. It's really hard to develop like anything meaningful if you don't have at least understanding how the data look like, what we're building, what we're trying to solve, and more to that. And then there are also not just capabilities, but some risks. So hallucinations, this is the biggest. Some people say it's not a bug, it's a feature, apparently, of LLMs. So basically, they make text up. And the thing is, if person asks about, for example, promotion, you don't want them to hallucinate something, then the person can take it, came then to the, let's say, higher folks and just say, look, your system told me that, so it's a truth, it's legally binded, that's it. Then you have like biases, toxicity, off-topic use. You don't want that your Q&A system gonna write Python code or doing something else, or I don't know, gonna explain how to build a house or how to cook some paella or something like that, basically. And also the most, let's say, difficult part is data leakage. So GDPR, Europe, welcome. And if person, imagine, asks something and provides some very specific PI data, which is like, I don't know, like individual tax service number, something you don't want it to leak to someone else. Or like really sensitive questions about salary. I don't know how it's in Germany. In the Netherlands, it's pretty much sensitive question. And usually the company policy, we do not, let's say, expose the salary. So you don't want it that someone has access to such type of information. So what type of libraries can help you with this? There are tremendous amount of open source Python libraries. I made a list for you, just tiny list here. So there's libraries that I work with on my own. So like the MLflow, the folks who work with AI, they know it's more for experiment tracking. And then they also added, let's say, model serving later. But recently, last 2 years, they also extended it now. And they have also a lot of really nice, useful features, basically for tracking, for tracing your LLM apps calls, and also to doing some evaluations and creating test sets. Adalflow is really nice. It was also built like against buggy and terrible code, which is not suitable for production, focus on optimization. So there is a list. There are a lot of different libraries that you can play around with. Today, we're going to toy with Evidently library. So it's basically started with as an AI ML observability platform, observability library. And that's what we're going to use today. So the famous cell, which runs the imports of the libraries. I think it's nothing very specific about that. So Evidently has the concept which is called reports, test suites, and then they have also a version of dashboard. So basically what this report is, you can use the reports in different ways. It's visual or like not visual if you prefer to. Way of computing specific metrics and then showing them where you can take a look at the, let's say, the current output of your system, and you can compare it with the output of the previous month, or a year, depends on what you want to do. And especially for data scientists, it also provides a lot of insights, because then you can see, okay, I see the specific things, specific features performing worse. Now I want to investigate, I want to drill down what's happening there. Or maybe the data changed. Let's say if we were predicting price of the houses and then apparently metro station was built there, then let's say the price of the house is going to rise. So all these questions like really, really useful. So for evaluation, we start working with reports. That's a simple way because it's visual, so you can see how it works, how it looks like. Then we're going to move to the next one, which is test suite. And then basically that's it. And what is also really nice, although I would say when you see import star, it's always give me a bit of a cringe. You don't want to import everything. But for this case, for this workshop, we're going to toy around with different pre-built metrics, with different pre-built like setups. And additional thing about Evidently, they have a concept which is called descriptor. So when you're working with evaluations or testing of the text objects, they created things which is called descriptor. It's basically a way to evaluate chunks of text you're working with. And that's exactly what you're using with LLMs, because it's mostly text-based. So how I let's say propose to continue, I can just start to show you a bunch of tiny things. And then when it's time for exercises, then we can decide. If you want, you can do exercises. I give you some time. If you don't want, it's your choice, right? Then in a couple, let's say in 5-10 minutes, I can get back. We can like make this exercise together, and then we're moving on. Exercises are really small. It's like 5-10 minutes max, just to get you moving through. And then the last exercises takes a little bit more time because there are some twists to it, just to tease you a bit. So we already, let's say, imported the libraries we need. Pandas, we're going to use just to frame our data set a bit and make it ready to be processed by Evidently library. Requests and bytes.io we're using just to fetch the data set from the GitHub, basically, and use it. So about the data set, it's like imitation of a real, let's say, logs, which were provided by this questions response system. That's, let's say, the data set that we have. So it contains approximately 600 question answer pairs, and that's what we're gonna work with today. So here, just like some basic things, we just, importing the CSV, we parse it, we're making sure that it parsed correctly, so the columns, which is, let's say, correspond to some timestamps values, is parsed as timestamps, as time. The categorical values is parsed as categorical values, so more or less like this. And we also set in specific index based on the timestamps when this question answer pair occur. So now I just want to run it to make sure to see how it looks like. I'm just asking basically to show me the 3 first lines. And what you see here, first it's your index, it's the timestamp when this, let's say, conversational part took place. Then you get a real request from the user. So here, for example, we have, how do you request medical leave through the employee portal? Like valid question, an employee has a question and supposed to get an answer. And then you have a long answer. So it's basically that was response that was produced. And then you have timestamps for when it's like when the request was sent by user, when the response came to the user, which organization. Here I'm saying it's made up name organization, it's not the real one. Then which model was used underneath. It was back then good time when you still can use GPT 3.5 Turbo. So, and then which region, then which environment. So it's not test suite, we like fetching real data from production. And then you have really interesting column. It's called feedback. So basically, we assume there is a specific feature in our UI, which user interacts with, which allow you to like downvote, upvote, or like do nothing. And basically, there are only 3 categorical values here. So number 1, it's none, when like there was no user actions. I mean, there was no user feedback. Then you have number 2 is basically when the response user is happy with the response, it says a thumbs up. And the third one is like thumbs down, like I'm happy with the response, help me. I need to back with blood vessels and everything to answer my question and not a stupid machine. So this is how this data set looks like. So what was the simplest thing that we can do? Oh, and I forgot to mention, so the way how Evidently works, because underneath it takes data frame, pandas data frame, we need specifically show Evidently how the columns look like and to which categories which columns belongs to. It's just to make sure that it's parsed correctly. And here we have date time, how it starts from the start time. You have text features, which are question and response, like human readable text. And then you have categorical features, such as organization name, model ID, feedback environment, and the rest of the things. So that's what you get at the end. So what can we do? If we want to develop quickly, we want to evaluate, what type of built-in, let's say, descriptors Evidently can offer us. And again, it could be not Evidently, it could be other libraries. All of them offer different, let's say, features available. You can just go through them. Maybe at the end, you will end up having your own in-house library, but you can, source the ideas from different places. Or maybe for, I don't know, like for some performance reasons, you prefer to do something different. One thing, because Evidently works internally with pandas data frame, it means that it keeps it in memory. So as soon, like it only can keep as much, let's say, text as your memory, let's say, can keep. And then if you go outside, then there is some integrations also with Spark, then you can go for it. Just keep this in mind. So if you want to parse like million logs at the same time, not be surprised that it will throw you error immediately. Here we are working with, let's say, a small, tiny data set. So descriptors. One simple descriptor that you can get is basically looking at text statistics. So what could be text statistics? It could be length of your text. So in this case, we say we are looking at responses. So this would be the length of the response. It could be amount of sentences in this response. It could be amount of words, amounts, let's say, of specific, let's say, emojis. Like we want to detect where there are like any non-letter characters, or like some ciphers, or there is some concept like out of vocabulary words, which is basically like the words like you're supposed not to use, or the words that you prefer, let's say, not to see. So all the things could be really quickly calculated for you, and it calculates the basic things like mean, max. You will just see it. So what we're going to do right now, we have these responses. We're not going to go through the whole data set. We're just going to use first 200 rows. It's like 1/3 of the whole, let's say, data frame that we have right now. And what we want just calculate the number of symbols. Why it's important? Remember, we had this, let's say, capabilities that responses should be 100 words. Here, we're not talking about words. We're talking about characters for now. But then you also can go into the words. And why it's important? Simple. If you have this as a hard requirement, as soon as models try to generate really long answers, you immediately hit the wall and you can stop early, and then you can investigate what's happening underneath. So really simple. We created now a variable which called text eval results. We use reports that mention that's the concept or class that Evidently built. And inside of this report, we call metrics. And this is pre-built metrics, which are text evals. That's the category we are working today with. And then it calls descriptors. So descriptor, it's like tiny function, tiny methods that can help you evaluate something. So in this case, you have a descriptor out of the box. There are, of course, documentation available. You can go and see which parameters there. You can also hover over it, and then you get some more information, what's there. And then what you want, when you create this report, you want to run it, and then it gives you an opportunity to pass 1 or 2 data sets. So one, it's your, let's say, if you just want to investigate completely something, you don't want to do any comparison, of course, then you have 0, none, let's say, reference data. And then you go for current data. That's, let's say, the thing you want to test. And if you want further use it for comparison, you want to look at outputs that you've done last week, you want to compare that with outputs this week, or you created a really important evaluation test set, I will mention it in a bit, then, of course, you pass it accordingly. And then you run it. So what you get as a result, remember I told you that it would be a little bit of visual stuff. Oh, sorry, we're in wrong direction. And I also need to change it to just to make it more lighter. Okay, here we go. That's, let's say, how it can look like. So it says, okay, text length for response. We're checking the first 200 rows. And it says, okay, count 200 responses. Yeah, true. We were looking at 200 responses. And then it calculates means, and then a lot of other, let's say, information. And again, if you're a data scientist, probably there will be more information for you because you can play around here and see linear scale, log scale, more of that. For now, you can just look at it and say, okay, it stays within our boundaries or not. And then you can create a colorful spaghetti. I will show you. What do I mean by that? That's what my usually internal joke. So, which is basically what it is. It's the text length for response per hour. Just a second. So, which means like spaghetti. Why it's important? Eventually, if you're looking at such a metric as a length response of your text, and then you see you have just on the XS, you have the X. Sorry, not Dutch, English. You have basically the time when the response occurs. So we have like 12 o'clock, April 8, 0 o'clock, 9. Then you can see that when specific moment of time, it gets, for example, out of the boundary, something like this. So it immediately helps you. It's like some kind of visual cues, which you can go zoom in further investigate. And the thing is, now what it has like this HTML file. You said, yeah, fantastic HTML file. What I can do with HTML file? You can export it to JSON. You can export it to just Python dictionary. So if you later need to integrate it with something somewhere, there are options for that. Do you have any questions? No? OK. No, this one's like, OK, good. So yeah.
The Excel CSV file you are referring to at the start as an input, right?
Yeah.
There is a CSV file.
Yeah, this is a CSV file, yes.
Yes. So is it common for everything, or is it a case specific? That's the question. I mean, is it a generic file which I can use in any of my projects, or it is specific to this project?
It's specific to this project, yes.
Can you just repeat the question? Because you have.
Oh, yeah. So the question is, the CSV file which we're using for this workshop, is it the generic one, or is it for this specific use case? So first, it's for this specific use case. Of course, if you're building something similar, you can take a look at it and play around with it. For now, we assuming that this is like a real life sample from the logs of, let's say you have some proprietary Q&A system, and there you were allowed to get some logs from it, and then these are logs we are working with. So now the moments, OK, now you look at piece of text, you also want to compare it with something. And to compare it with something, we just do the same, but we just pass in two, let's say, data frames, reference and one. I just show you another colorful spaghetti, and then we'll add something really, really important about this. So now here you have a comparison. So basically, why it's helpful, if you're investigating how your output looks, again, specific amount of time ago versus now, you can see immediately there is, for example, specific difference here. So we can further zoom in, and you can investigate there's something happening here. At least it will guide you, again, as a pointer. So the things about reference data sets. When you start working with, let's say, the models that produce text, for your Q&A use cases, or for eventually for almost all use cases, you're going to build something that you call eval test set, like evaluation test set. What does it mean? You want to create some kind of golden set or reference set that you say that it's good enough for you, and then the rest of the thing that you're doing, you can compare it to it. And here comes the twist. So specifically for this use cases, you're not going to build 2, you're going to build 3. So one that you build, it's usually, let's say, happy path. OK, this is expected question. This is expected answer. That's it. Like, really, it sounds simple, but it's not really simple. If it's not in QA, if you're building something different, again, if you're, I don't know, want to transfer text into SQL, let's say comments, then you can look at whether it's created proper SQL with proper syntax. If you want to ask it write Python code, you're doing the same. So different options. That's the first one, so the happy one. The second one is comes with your edge cases, of course. And edge cases would be really, really specific to your domain, to your use case. So what kind of edge cases we can have here? We can have generic one. For example, user just sent like an empty request. Like, it's just somehow the system allows to do it. What should we do? Should we get back to user said, we didn't get your question, get it? Like, how are you going to process it? It's like standard one. But what comes really specific to working with LLMs eventually, if it's a question of off-topic, like how should we respond to it? If it's a question, for example, in English, OK, we know we're like, if our system language is English, we're doing this. What if question comes in Spanish? Should we decline answering it, said we don't understand Spanish? Should we translate Spanish to English and then respond, like send response back in English? Or should we take the Spanish, process it, and get back response in Spanish? Like, if the person gets like some type of like competitors questions, should we process this question? Should we deny this question? What should we do? So here I'm saying, like, your domain experts that you have, like, you have some common sense of what type of behavior you expect from this system, especially if it's like Q&A, If it's internal, again, it's slightly easier rather than its external one. So that's what I'm referring to reference text test. And then I mentioned also the third one. So we have happy path. We have this, let's say, edge cases. What is the number 3? Number 3, it's adversarial inputs. And that's especially really, really hard when you want to expose the system to the external world. And that's when people, through different types of manipulation, they keep growing. There is like OWASP for all this, let's say, security and safety things that can happen. I just looking at it and it's just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. So people becoming more and more creative into finding the way how to break the system and get some access to something that you're not supposed to expose. So that was like a quick detour into the different test sets, like how to build these test sets, like where you can get this data from for these evaluation test sets. You can start writing your own, like if you know at least what you're talking about, what's here, you can do that. Or you can, if you already have something in place, of course, if you have permission to use these logs, or if they have, for example, sensitive information, at least get the masked information from at least something to start with. But you also, especially for Q&A, you also can use synthetic data. And synthetic data in the sense that you can, again, use LLMs to generate the synthetic data for you. But it could be, I want to create some like potential malicious inputs. Give me 5 options. Or I want to like rephrase it. Or I want to do, for example, misspellings. Like what if not like write it in perfect English? So like there's like different options available. Okay, so that was, let's say, playing around with text length. So we have option just to keep a piece of text and do it. Another option we can have basically the like comparison. So in this case, when we're saying reference data, we're gonna get back to that like specific evaluation suites that we do. And also keep in mind that all of our test sets, they're not set in stone. They're gonna grow with you. Like the further you develop, the more adversarial input you're gonna collect, the more like things you're gonna like get, the more things gonna come there. So that's what we just did for text length. What I wanted you to do, I wanted literally write you 1 line of code, it's like only 1 line, and it's basically get a side-by-side comparison of the sentence count. So what I'm asking you to do, there is a fantastic link here, which gets you back to the descriptor docs, and I need to find you the descriptor responsible for basically doing sentence count for us. And we want to compare the reference data, which like assumption our first 100 rows, and we're going to compare just with the next one. So I think I can give you like, well, how much do you need? Like 3-5 minutes, and then we can move forward. It's like 1 line of code. Anyone found it? Yeah, okay, fantastic. Yeah, what are the results?
Just we replace this.
Yeah. That's You see, so that's the beauty of pre-built thing. But again, just starting point. We're just starting. Anyone else? Who got it? Okay, more? Anyone who needs help? Just let me know. Should we move for the next one? Or we still need more time? Okay, let's move, because the next one would be more interesting and the next one would be more interesting. Okay, really simple. As I mentioned, there are a lot of pre-built stuff for you. If you're interested to look what's inside of it, of course, you can go to their GitHub page and then see how the code looks like. So what is eventually, evidently, have done for you. So it's really super simple. We're just using descriptor, which is called sentence count. So sentence count here, and I'm just calling it. Okay, again. Indentation, yes. Fantastic. And then should be this. Okay, so here, out of the box, what you can get comparison, not only just like a number of characters, but you also like count sentences. Again, why it's important to count sentences? If for use case, it's important. For example, you are prompting LLM to say, like, give a summary in 5 sentences, something like this. They're not really good with doing that. They're sometimes going to do like 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, but at least like for some sanity checks, it could be done. Okay, so that was like just really simple things, which were just like looking at statistics, what we can do. Next step, text patterns. And the text patterns for software engineers, regex. So basically what you have right now, instead of learning all the ropes of regex and then how it looks like what you should do, I'm still constantly looking at the documentation because when I get confused, here you have already out-of-the-box things produced for you. So what could it be? It could be, again, let's check mention of the competitor's name. Let's check specific forbidden words. Let's check whether this response contains emails or other links. Whatever you can think about could be there. So there are already some of descriptors pre-built for you that you can use. Okay, so we're starting with text patterns. What's happening here? Remember the same story. Report, for report GOMS metric, text evals. We're working with a column response all the time. There will be some deviations later, but for now, the column response that we're interested in. And then we have descriptor, which is called includes words. And then we just provide in the word list we want to look at. Here it's salary, benefits, and payroll. And what is really nice, it's not going to just look specifically at these words. It also can provide a bit of, let's say, changes in the ending. So if you have salary or salaries, it's still going to catch it. So it's not just exact match. Yes? If you, yeah, no, it's a really valid question. It's a really good one. Yes? Okay, sorry. The question was, does it catch synonyms? This specific descriptor don't, but the other descriptors, well. So here we have, and you also can adjust just for your, let's say, specificity. You can have display name. So this is the thing that we were seeing, let's say, on the left side. And we just say, for example, let's call it mention compensation. And we're running it right now only on just a set of data. We're not comparing data sets against reference. We're just doing this. Okay, let's see what it delivers to us. Okay, here we go. So we said we're interested in this like response, whether the compensation was mentioned. We see that's false 182 times and then true 18. So literally what we see in here, that 18 options were indeed questions about compensation. If for some reasons, like you don't want them to be seen or something, that's something like a quick check, which is really easy to run. It doesn't really super, let's say, compute effective or something like that. Sorry, it's not really hard on compute. So it's really easy to run, for example, on each commit if you like toy in with a prompt or you like change in different parameters of the prompt, let's say. So, and again, you can get my favorite spaghetti. Oh, no, it's not spaghetti. Sorry. Now we have this thing. First, it looks a little bit messy. What does it mean? So the green one means true. So here you can spot on which dates which responses were mentioned in this, so we can again zoom in further, investigate it. So that's our. Now we come into the second exercise. So now I want you to look at the documentation, and now I want you to check whether the first 200 responses contain links or not. Because remember, we had this specific, let's say, capabilities, which is expected from our system, that our response always return a link. It doesn't say, though, valid link, or it has a link. I don't know, link to Meetup, link to something else. But anyway, let's see how this goes. In the beginning, yes. But they created, sorry, the comment was descriptors are straightforward. So yeah, that's the idea. So they built with a lot of love by open source community for you. So you can not to spend time Googling through regex documentation or asking ChatGPT to write it for you, which is probably not working, and then you're spending another half of the day debugging. So that's the thing. Yeah? Yes, there is. So the question was if there is a way to implement custom descriptors. Yes, there is a room for it, and they also provide you with instructions. Basically, you have like some pattern, and you need to follow this pattern, design pattern, to create your own. Yes. And by the way, like if you're interested, they also always open for open source contributions. So for example, if you came across specific use case, then you can write your own descriptor, you can push it. And then also if you provide some context about why it's valuable to have it, the whole community can benefit from it.
Can you tell a little more about this, like evidently package? Is it like a model built on top of any like, is it built on top of ChatGPT, or is it on its own?
Okay, so the question, the question was about what is like evidently package, what it is. So basically, it's a bunch of Python classes, which has different functionality. Some of the classes has the possibility to call different APIs of LLMs. Some of them have possibility to call, for example, Hugging Face Hub and fetching specific models from it. You will see it with your own eyes in a couple of minutes. And there is also, again, like UI part of it, for example, for dashboards, and also to make in it.
Yeah, but for security reasons, if we think about putting it in production, right? So will we know which all LLM models it is connected to, or it will always be
No, you will know. You will see, because for this one, for example, if you want to call, if you want to create LLM as a judge, you need to call specific endpoints, and they have integration with OpenAI. They have a bunch of integration with other ones, but you will see, and to make these calls, you will need to have your own API keys, so you will know exactly what you're calling, which version of the model you will know it. Okay, so how's it going with contain links? I'm curious in the results. Yeah, anyone? It contains links?
I don't know if there is
Only one.
Only one. Yeah, more? How many links? Are there any links? There are no links, or at least once? What do you have? False to 100, yeah, okay. And you run it on the first 200 responses? And second one? Yeah, second 200. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so let's see. So what we get. Okay, so I'm going with the descriptor. Just put it here. So it's, oh, not sentence count. I think I was too. It's contain links. Yes. If I can type. Contains link. Oh, apparently not. Okay. And then we need provide here reference data would be none, because we don't want to compare it to anything. And here we have QI logs, and I told that it should be the first to almost, no. Hmm?
After none,
Yes, there should be comma, yes. Eagle eye. Let's run it. Okay. Yeah, that's the result what we get, which means false. So we miserably failed. One of the main capabilities that was expected provide links, and what we see, do we see any links? It didn't find any links. So there are two possibilities here, maybe more, but one possibility, it indeed doesn't have any links. Second, then maybe it contains links. There is something with descriptor. If something with descriptor, you can always open an issue, open a pull request, like submit an issue, fix it on your own if you can, if you want. Open a pull request, and then make it available for the community. So, and again, favorite, not spaghetti time, but the house building time. Here, just see basically amount of category. And here, what I also didn't do, but other site, there also another thing, which is set display name for this eval. So you can also add here contains link, comma, then you can add display name, then you can put custom name, but it's just for customizing the, let's say, visuals that we see right now. Okay, so that's what we tried so far. We tried really low-hanging fruits, really simple, right? Quickly recap. First was text statistics, length, amount of characters, like really simple stuff. Second is like more expanded, is basically what we can do with regex. It's just magic on regex and Bayesian, sorry, a little bit on steroids. That's what you can get from it. And it's already for you. And if you check, there are more to that. There are, for example, doesn't contain specific words, so you can check on it. There are different quick check that you can do and evaluate. Okay, and now we come to the point of basically, again, evaluating responses with machine learning by using already existing models. So there was a question about, like, does it like picks up synonyms? So we're gonna get back to this question soon. So for now, we start with first one. I will go to here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use concept of semantic similarity. Really simply say, machine is not capable of comparing two pieces of text because it doesn't have any meaning for machine. This text should be, let's say, physically translated into like vector, which basically going to represent this text. But why this would be converted in this vector, it has to be somehow the context, the meaning should be captured. And that's come the concept of embeddings, where we can, let's say, preserve the meaning of specific text. And the whole idea of semantic similarity, you have one vector in the space, you have another vector in the space, and what it does, it just calculates the distance between them. And then the saying whether the answers is, whether these two concepts are, let's say, really semantically close, which like they close. So if you expect to get, if you're just looking at responses, or for example, of a pair of question and response, if question about salary and you get response about salary, we're gonna say they're semantically close. If the question is about, I don't know, like benefits and you get answer about gym, like it's not gonna, like, it's completely unrelated. So that's what you can do. And for this one, underneath, under the hood, evidently eventually uses the model, which take the text, basically taking a look at available embeddings. If not, to generate the new one. And then it's create these two vectors, calculates the distance between them, and return you the result. So I'm going to run it right now. It can take a little bit of time, like not really, really long. But again, the more text we process, the longer it would be. It's already in the process. Let's take a look. Still, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the similarity metric at the top of the is Euclidean distance, not cosine similarity, right?
Yeah, the question was what the distance we're talking about. I really like simplify it. It's like we're talking about Euclidean distance between the vectors. Yes. Okay, so now it's done. Let's take a look. Here it gives us basically response, and then it says that if we look here, that at least, let's say, from all these 200 responses, at least, let's say, half of them is more or less like semantically close, which means if we look what we comparing here, So here we were looking at the column response and column question. So what we are doing here with this piece of code, we were comparing two columns, like pairwise. So you have a question, you have a response, and we wanted to know whether the, let's say, the response is meaningful, like whether it makes sense or not. Because in this case, you want to capture, again, where this not go completely south or creating something that doesn't exist. So this thing, the question is, can I run it on each commit? Probably not. So you need to make, let's say, choices. But for example, if you change, again, if you change your prompt, if you do some like tiny changes, that's where you can run it. Also, if you want, for example, to test, let's say, a new version of model pop up, and you want to test it, where it's, for example, cheaper than the one that you use. So you can do some kind of regression testing where you can run it like consequently, and you can compare how the responses generated by this new model looks in comparison with the responses that, let's say, your model is generated. Or it could be otherwise. There are specific responses, you notice, where your, let's say, performance not really well, and then see, does it make sense to use something better for that. So now your task is to go for and check, to do the sentiment check. So just tiny information. Underneath the sentiment analysis, there is a custom machine learning model, which were created by Evidently, if I'm not mistaken. And this model is basically take a look again at the sentiment of the text, where it's like positive or negative, and it returns back a score on a specific scale from -0 to 0. And it says, let's say, how like response sentiment looks like. Why it's important? You want, let's say, to look through it, and then if you see that, for example, specific responses looking really strange, you want to investigate it further, or you want to make sure when you tested different models that the new models, let's say, performs better. Again, there is like different use cases, how and where you can use it. So what I need from you, I need to, you know, where's the documentations, where to find the documentation, go there and check how basically execute the sentiment analysis. So which descriptor to pick up, which parameters to put into the descriptor, and what to do with that. And remember, we are not having, in this case, reference data. We just want to check it on the first 200 responses. First 200, yeah. But you also, if you feel, you know, you want to check more, you can check more, but just keep in mind, it has a little bit of latency. So, which means that if you want, the bigger text would be, the longer the response would be for you. Yeah.
No question. The first 200 responses, are those static inputs which we have included in the CSV file at the start of it?
Yeah, it's the first 200 rows. Yeah, we have in total 600. So if you want to do some comparison, we can compare like 300 with 200. Just for this case, I don't want to go above 200 because further we're going to call other different models from Hugging Face Hub, and I don't want just to take like the whole night, you know, to do calculations.
Which models from Hugging Face?
Which one?
Which models were from Hugging Face? You said that if we go beyond 200, then we need to additionally call models from Hugging Face.
We need to check, like for each one, literally we need to check. Yeah, because I would say partially yes, partially not. But usually, again, in case with Evidently, if you're working with like as a data frame, a pandas data frame, then it would be the size of your memory. I don't know, let's say what is the size of your memory is. It could be 1 million rows, could be 3 million rows, it could be 2,000 rows, just to keep in this mind.
So if I go, for example, for 600 and it doesn't base like semantic, it doesn't work out, then I need to have one model imported from Hugging Face for semantic and then use it.
Yeah, so the thing is how Evidently designed this. When they created, or they directly call in specific models, or they just created wrappers so you can pick up your own models from Hugging Face Hub. So it's not only the model, that's the models like that's already, let's say, implemented for you, so you can just call them directly. but you will be bounded by the version and the model evidently chose for you. Or other ways, because they build this like custom wrapper, you can pass the model you want to use. So, and then like the sky is your limit. Only one tiny thing, just like as a good practice, Hugging Face is a terrific resource. It's a fantastic one. When pulling something from Hugging Face, especially like models, big models with a lot of weights, please have at least some basic like security scanning before running it somewhere. Just saying, just like have like usually what we like usually set up some kind of just a sandbox, and then they can run it just to make sure that there is nothing bad in it, just to make sure, because you can you can store a lot of disgusting stuff in pickle or in joplib. So, and it can run interesting codes like going, collecting different, let's say, secrets from your laptop, like looking for specific, I don't know, like AWS, Azure, or GCP case. Just keep in mind. It's like the good practice is also pulling Docker images. Like you're not going to just run any Docker image, you know, you need to do some check before that.
Okay, doesn't Hugging Face itself, before accepting the model as an open source, check for security or for any kind of?
They have specific checks, but now currently there are more than 3 million models. It's impossible to check all of them, literally impossible.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, how it's going with the sentiment check? Anyone got to the sentiment check? What are the results?
68 of the responses have like 0.8 a positive.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? And it was on the first 200 rows? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to run it because I want to show you a bunch of other models, and the time is flying, so we're going to need to go to check in other things. Just point you to test use, and then we're going to gradually wrap it up. Okay, so Santi. Okay, here we come. None. In this case, I'm not losing comma. And then we have our QI logs. So first, oh. Okay, let's go. Let's see. We said for 200. That's what you get. And again, we have spaghetti when you can look at the mean of the sentiment for response per hour. If you're a data scientist or like data analyst, it can give you some meaning, so you can take a look at it and say, okay, I want to investigate what's happened here, for example. Okay, I know this timestamp, it gives me the timestamp when it's happened, so we can continue further. So as I mentioned about the models, now, for example, there are a bunch of really useful models on the Hugging Face Hub, and one of them is basically the toxicity model. Why do you need it? Because you can do it on your own, of course, but the time to collect this data set, to create it, to make sure that you catch up all edge cases, and it's already done for you by community. So what's happening here underneath evidently pulls the models that measure toxicity. If you want to know which model specifically, documentation is your friend, of course. So it's the model that measures, basically trying to evaluate and gives you back a true or false if the hate speech or like gender or any, let's say, like ethnic origin, religion, sexual orientation, things were mentioned. Why do you want to run it? Because you want to make sure that your model is not doing really bad things to users. So in this case, you can, again, quickly evaluate. It's already created for you. Of course, you can expand it, make it better. But for this use case, it's really nice. It's already implemented, so you can just run it. So here, what's happening now, you see that it's pulling the toxicity model from Hugging Face, so it can take some time. So while it's pulling, let's wait. I just briefly want to mention a couple of things about LLM as a judge, and then we can look at the results, okay? So evidently also has some pre-built templates for you if you want to build your LLM as a judge. So basically, what is LLM as a judge? You are writing specific prompts in which you ask to perform specific evaluation task, and then you're calling a third party or using your own self-hosted LLM model, and it's following instructions to this prompt and generate for you an output. One thing, can I just not like write something very specific, just use generic prompts and say like, oh, evaluate this answer on the scale from 1 to 10. Can you evaluate this, each input as a human being from 1 to 10? Probably not. So the best way to do it, to give as clear instructions as possible. And for example, ask it to be, let's say, binary, say true or false. So let's say, does this response contains like negative like connotations about something, yes or no? Does this response look concise, clear, transparent, and like other parameters, yes or no? Or you can give it like pairwise comparison and say, look at these two outputs, and then say which of the outputs is better, and then provide reasoning behind that. As a really, let's say, good rule, try to, if you want to do some evaluation, try to break it down to smaller chunks. So instructions that you're going to write will not be do everything at the same time. You need to be as specific as possible. Why I need this? Remember, you want to try a new model, something different happens, you want to run some kind of regression testing. The more concrete things are, the simpler for you would be evaluate. So LLM as a judge, again, it's just a way to write prompts in such a way when you ask another LLM to evaluate the output of the current LLM in use with providing specific instructions. We are not doing any exercises like this right now because they require an OpenAI API key. If you want to play it around at home, I provide you with links with everything that you can do. And evidently already made some, let's say, domain-related pre-built prompts for you. Or there are some prompts for you which are not domain-related, but they have like standard things that you want to test. So it's already like building blocks for you to play around with them. So that's about LLM as a judge. And usually how you do it, so you start in with writing this prompt, then you run this evaluation, but then you need evaluate your evaluation. So, and then you need to adjust, iterate. So you see, we going like in recursion with we evaluating this, evaluating that, by evaluating this to evaluate that. Okay, so while we were speaking, the toxicity things run. So what we have here, you see, I noticed that it basically doesn't calculate, let's say, mean, standard, anything, and it's true because what it returns true or false. So there are like nothing to calculate with, but at least it gives you, again, that's the count, and it gives you something that you can look at. So I would say if you're gonna, it says mean Hugging Face toxicity for responses per hour. So probably you need to look at this one. And that's, again, my favorite color for spaghetti that you want to compare with, or you want to investigate. Maybe you are, for example, in a country where a specific religious things, they're not allowed to say, your model says that, and that's why it's picked up. So again, by tweaking some of the parameters of the model, you can adjust, let's say, the temperature of how you want to use it. So what we've seen so far, we started with really simple things. We started just like basic text statistics, really low-hanging fruits. Then we went into the using regex, and again, evidently has really nice pre-built stuff for you. And then we gradually step into the domain of evaluating the output of your system by using machine learning models that's already were pre-trained for you. And here you can use or the models that evidently done for you, or the models that could be pulled from Hugging Face. And there are a lot of very useful models there. For example, one of the workshops that we've done recent time, so I guess probably you know booking.com. So they were talking about how to evaluate fake user reviews. And that's also like by pulling one of the Hugging Face models, doing like reading these reviews and trying to evaluate whether they like other specific patterns that you see. For example, you get a bunch of reviews and you see that some specific patterns, like it's impossible that one person was at like 360 hotels during the same night or something like this, probably something going on here. So there are different options that's already done for you. Please just use it. Just know that they exist, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time again. But also remember, in the beginning, we were talking about the column, which is user feedback, like downvote, upvote, or nothing. What you can also do, you can do a lot of like nice summaries. So every other columns that you have, you can also run evaluations on that. So far, we were working with 2 text columns. We were working with a column, main column was response, and then there was, for comparison, the column question. For now, we're just looking at a completely different column where you can also run some specific statistics. And why is this important for us? So with this one, here again, we're looking at the first 200 rows. What it can do for us, it can say, look, we know that 150 responses doesn't have any, let's say, user feedback. We have upvote. Oh, cool. Probably we can look at it, what exactly they were, so we can go into it and investigate it further. But we also have downvote. So now you can specifically zoom in into these downvote scenarios and see what's happened there, whether their response was completely off the line or it was something different. Again, it's give you at least pointers where to go. And here we go. Basically, red one is none, so no user feedback. And then you have green downvote. And like, if I'm looking at that, I would be slightly, let's say, surprised, because I see that, for example, here you have piece from 10 April to 11 April. There is no downvotes. But here, if you look at this part, there are some downvotes. Again, why they're happening. Are we looking at the same model generating the responses? Are we looking at something different? What happens? Maybe, I don't know, we release something here and then there is no problems at all and people are happy. Maybe it's already passed, so we don't need to further investigate it. So like, there are different options possible. Just keep it in mind, so you not just can use and doing different like statistics or different things based on this text columns. You also can play around with this type of columns, and it's not only feedback, whatever you can think about it. Okay, so we done it so far. We played around. We see like there are pre-built stuff for you. You can literally pull out your sleeve and quickly run specific tests, quickly run some evaluations, but all of it was visual. I mentioned you can basically export it into or JSON or a dictionary, but like how it's useful for me. If I want to run tests, it should be a part of my test suite. So it means that I need to define specific metrics, and these metrics has to be specific way calculated, and then I can, based on that, that would be the text conditions. What's really nice with the test suites, there are tremendous amount of tests that you can write. Of course, you started always with tiny bits, like you want to have unit tests, and you're starting with really just writing basic assertions. So you have specific behavior that you expect from your application, specific features that is supposed to deliver. So if you know that it expects to get like the user in English and do something, you can start writing something around it. And if you know that to execute this, it should make a call to, I don't know, like to a specific database and return something back, you can just like start testing basic pieces of functionality just to see whether is a call happening or not. But you can do much more than that. And there is a fantastic Python library which is called Behave. It's also mentioned here in the notebook. You can take a look at it later. What is the beauty of this library? It allows you to write down the test scenarios in this Gherkin format, given, when, then, and it basically allows you to have factual confirmation of specific requirements or specific behavior that your non-technical stakeholders expect. And you have this confirmation in text. So when you go on vacation and somebody else taking over, they don't need to go and look, who should I talk to? You have it all. It's all like, committed, and you can look at it and you can run tests. And Behave basically builds for you a bunch of decorators. And that's exactly the decorators given when, which you can run. So it's basically checks whether the specific behavior is executed or not. So really, really important one. And especially I highly recommend it specifically for, let's say, I don't know, like ironing down or like gluing this, let's say, requirements. Because then if somebody says to you, no, I didn't tell you this, look, you tell me this, that was correct. What do you want from me? You can always, fall back to these scenarios. And it's all transparent. And especially with more and more requirements would be leveraged with a starting of the, let's say, active implementation of EU AI Act. And although it talks about AI systems and specifically separately has so-called like transparent requirements for usage of different LLMs and other foundation models, the biggest moment here is transparency and the possibility to do an audit, to perform audit. And if you have clear evaluation set, clear scenarios, this is what we're going to evaluate, that's how we're going to check it, that's other steps, this our evaluation, let's say, data sets which we're using, then you have the full transparency. You can get the audit properly, and especially like any particular requirements. So that was the detour about the different types of text. I just mentioned a bunch of text for you. Here you can look at them, also like adversarial tests and so on. For now, it's already evening. Time clock is ticking. So I just want to do you the last exercise. So before that, we are working with reports. Now we're switching to another class that's evidently built for you, which is called Test Suite. And how it works, you define specific conditions for the test, and then you run it, and then it shows you, it also has, of course, a visual part with color codes. It's just green if it's everything, if the text pass, and red if text fails, and you can investigate it further. So what we're doing right now here, we're using this class, which is called Test Suite, and then we define tests, and we're setting up 3 testing conditions. So we're saying that all the testing conditions would be related to just taking text length, but it would be a very different, let's say, requirements. So for example, the first one, and here you see GT, LTE, GT, it's basically greater than, less than, but it's, again, it's all, you can find it in documentation. So the first line is, we want to check that our responses follow these conditions. Like, responses length is always non-zero. You have test, using here a class called text column value min, the minimum. We measure in text length on response, because that's what we're looking at. And then we set it up, basically, it should be always greater than 0. Another condition is maximum response length doesn't exceed 1,800 symbols, for example, due to UI constraints for some specific reasons. And we set in it here, we got text column value max. Again, text length on response, and then we have this number. And the last one is min response length is about 200 symbols. For example, it's like specific known pattern that we have, and we want to run it on the first 200 logs. That's what we're doing, and that's how it looks like. So we get in this, you see it says we run 3 tests, 2 were a success. We get like 0 warning, we get 1 fail, we get 1 error. Let's take a look. So each test for now, you can click on it, and it gives you something. Again, you can export all of it into JSON, like not the all visual part, but I mean the values that you need for like setting up thresholds and everything. So for example, you can integrate it easily in your CI/CD pipelines. And then it gives like some information, but here what we're interested in, this maximum value of the text length. And here we have the threshold, which is 1,800. Somehow we had it longer, so which means the test fails. So we can take a look, like there are absolute values, there are also the percentage. So it's basically show us what's going on, and then you can investigate it further. So what I need from you right now, it's the last exercise for today, and then trust me, a couple of words and you are good to go, or at least good to eat further and negotiate. And those who are watching us online, good to go. We picking up the same test suite. I need from you to write 1 line of code, 1 line only, and we need to set up the new condition. So that's the condition. You should have average response sentiment positive. So now we're not talking about text length. We're talking about sentiment. So remember, we were working with sentiment, but we were working with, it's on a dashboard with the reports. So you can also find such test, which can test sentiment. And then its average is positive, which is going to help you to set up GT, LTE, or something else here. It's the last line. And for this one, I will give you, let's say, 8-minute round. Let's see how it goes. And then we're going to wrap it up. And I'm gonna grab some water. Yeah, just give me that water. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. How sentiment is going? Anyone gets the test? What is the hardest part? Besides it's evening after working day.
Is there a function for average?
You like this function is already here. Like you can see it. It's already here. Yeah, well, you got it. Let's take a look.
Like this, I just implement it inside. Like this. And it should be above 0.
Yeah, and I would say equal or above, because remember you have from -1 to 1.
Mhm.
So like I would say equal 0 or more than 0.
Oh,
Yeah, because here is like now it's greater than 0,
Yeah.
and I want to see it greater or equal to 0.
okay.
So that's fantastic on the last piece. Anyone else? Let's see. I'm getting back to my presentation table. So I want to have a tiny debate. So we're saying we need to write this line with a new condition. So average response sentiment is positive. So I'm just going to copy. Oh, no, I'm not going to copy. I'm just going to go. So we're starting with average response sentiment. We're talking about mean here. OK, so we're just picking up this test column, test column value mean. OK. Then we go for the column name. OK, and now I don't see anything. Now we go in with the sentiment. That was the good one. Now we want this on response column. Okay. Not on response. And here comes the interesting question. So with this part, like there is no debate. Yes, indeed, it's test column value mean, it's column name, sentiment, and response. Debate is on this piece. Should we pick up greater than 0 or equal to 0 and greater than 0? So any ideas on this piece? Should it be GT equals 0 or GT equals 0? Yeah?
I think GT.
Why?
Because for me, 0 means like no feedback. I mean, it's neither positive or negative. It's kind of in the middle, and if it's a bit more than 0, then it's in the direction of a positive, other than in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah. Any other opinions on that? Should it be equal to 0 and greater than 0, or it should be just greater than 0?
Depends on what you consider as positive. What do you consider 0 as positive?
That's a really good one, because if we take in a look at sentiment, it says that it returns sentiment from -0 to 0. That's our range. When it say like from -0 up to 0, from -1 up to 0, not including 0, that's a negative. And then from 0, including 0 to 1, that's a positive. And why I mentioned that it's important, it's a tiny thing. You can get it if you go to the documentation and take a look exactly how they interpret results. But this tiny thing, which is are we including 0 or not, can lead to completely different test results and completely different expectations. Just keep this in mind, because again, different people could have different interpretations of that. So just to make sure that you align your interpretations before. And let's run it. So now we have 4 tests. We have, oh, sorry, there was, yeah. That's how we ended up. We ended up having 0 including. So that's what we get. 4 tests, 3 success, 1 fail and error. So here we're using, again, pre-built tests for you, pre-built metrics, and then it will always, let's say, give this type of results. If there is a way to customize test suite, yes. I also added some information for you. You can take a look later. Basically, you can customize your test suite. Of course, you can build your own custom tests, but you also can define specific parameters about the test. So you can define whether, for example, condition should test pass or fail. What is the definition of pass fail? You can say what type of criticality it could be, just give a warning or not giving a warning. So based on that, you can customize it fully. And getting back to the questions, which was like asked before, so can you customize descriptors? Yes, you can customize descriptors. Within the descriptors, can you customize the models that are called? If it's from Hugging Face Hub, yes, you can customize it. And with this test suite, can you customize it? Yes, of course, you can customize it. So you can extend with different, completely new sets. You can come up with a slightly different way of, let's say, setting up criticality and other parameters. And that's basically where the building blocks. We started with this like evaluation framework where you can go. So you're going to create this. We are doing a lot of iterations, going back and forwards. You're going to create specific data sets, which we can use like to as a, let's say, ground truth for doing evaluations. Then after that, after doing some ad hoc evaluations, you can translate them into test suite. In this test suite, you can run on the specific, let's say, conditions, and you can use it just to like catch specific regressions or something changed, or you can use it just for continuous evaluation. So let's say you schedule that every, I don't know, every week, Sunday evening is going to fetch a sample of, let's say, responses. That is like, for example, questions and answers pairs, and then it's going to run evaluation according to our this ground truth set, and then notify you if something going on. I added some, let's say, information about you about monitoring, which I'm saying that the hardest part, it's not the monitoring, the hardest part for any LLM app is the whole concept of observability, because you need to come up with the metrics. It's impossible to come up with a good metrics from the first run, so you're definitely going to look what other people are using, what other options. I gave you some examples here further in the text. You can look at it home. What type of metrics you can take a look at. There are also some completely new metrics designed. For example, if you're looking for cost and latency, because the way how LLM works, they generate text like piece by piece. They call it token by token, and the token could be a word, could be a chunk of the world, it could be different. And then now you have completely different, let's say, new set of metrics, which we're not using before. And they can also help you to predict some costs for running specific evaluations or some costs for further improving your app. And then you can see, does it make sense or not? Because probably you're above your, let's say, money threshold. And metrics is just half of the battle. When you start debugging, you start with, okay, I get an alert that some metric like go over the threshold, for example. Then I go and look into logs, of course. The question is what to log. I would say log everything, because the more complex system, the harder it would be. Keep in mind that specific moments, your storage of the logs just can explode, you just start growing exponentially. And keep in mind that when we're talking about logs, we're talking about also context, like literally like content of the logs. I'm not just interested that at this amount this API call was made. I want to know what was the payload of this request and what was the payload of the response. So like the more and more things you need to log, and also keep in mind if there are any sensitive data, how you're going to process it and work with that. But it's not enough again. You have metrics, they can alert you something happening. You have logs, which basically like collection of events, you can go and check it. But now we are getting back to the whole concept of tracing, because what you want to know how it started, how the user request comes in, what steps, all intermediate steps that were happening here, and then here how we end up returning, let's say, response back to the user. And for this one, there are, again, open source library available. So for example, evidently uses behind the scenes Tracely. It's open source library based on OpenTelemetry, which allows you also to basically like collect logs and execute tracing for different API calls and calls within the system that happens. So in this case, if you want to play around with it, feel free. I just mentioned it, feel free. Just keep in mind, because you want to interact, not in this case with simulation as we did today, you need to interact with a real LLM, so it's going to cost you, unless you want to host it on your own and do some magic. So a lot of information today. Sorry, I wanted to give it more structure, somehow just go like all the way around. Wanted to make sure that we can tailor it, at least for people who never done it before. Now I realize it still sounds too complex, so probably I need to spend more time on going through different like components. But anyway, for me, what is most important, like basically the takes away for today, that first of all, there is completely new words of development, which is this evaluation-driven development, completely new concept. The faster we adapt to it, the faster we know how to do it, the better it would be. Then the second one, the architecture of your app can just like skyrocket. Now there was a conference and it was about agents in production, and then we were talking not about like separate agents, but when you have the whole agents networks. And my first question was, if you run an agents in distributed system, how on earth are you going to do all the tracing of all the logs? Like how it's going to happen? That's why I keep asking people who claim they have, for example, huge, massive agentic systems in production, but there is no clear answer how they're doing it. So if any one of you know these people, please, I would love to chat with them. I want to know how they do it without raising costs. And a lot of people saying that the cost of using LLMs, they're dropping. Yes, it's true. The costs are dropping. If you compare the cost of making an API call 2 years ago versus now, it's way lower. But think about that the cost per request grows up. And why it grows? Because now we're capable of handling more, let's say, difficult tasks. So before that, it was like really simple, let's say, simple questions, simple answer back. And now it's becoming like more and more complex. That's the second thing. The third thing, without evaluation framework, your development is doomed. So, or you have to be on call 24/7. You're not allowed to have holidays. You have to forget about your personal life and everything, and you're just dedicating all it to make sure that everything runs. If you want to sleep during the night, you need evaluation framework. You need a bunch of automated tests, and you need, of course, at least for the beginners, a basic observability, just the basic one. You can always improve it and make it harder in the long term, but you have to have something. And keep in mind, you want to automate things. Until now, I never seen anything in production based on specific like features provided by LLMs where there were no still human oversight. So what I'm trying to say that you have to pull it like once, it depends on like the usage of the thing that you built. You have to pull it. You have to check how it looks like. Or like if you're not knowledgeable about like reading the text, but you have to basically as a human read what's happening there, because the world is changing, the models are changing, the way how they produce and generate this text is changing. New attacks like surfacing, there are a lot of things. So saying that we built it, we shipped it, and then there is probably one person on call who's gonna just like troubleshoot it immediately. I would love to say yes, that's a happy path, but I guess until we find a way fully mitigate hallucinations and everything, you have to do it. You have to check it. So it's going to cost you, like operational wise, it's going to still cost you because somebody need to take a look at it. I guess that's it for today, especially for online part. Thank you so much for staying and being with us today. The video is available. The repository is here for you. So you know what to do. Thank you so much. Join our events. We have a lot of things prepped for you. Interesting one, I guess, and PyLadies Hamburg, also PyLadies Amsterdam. CFP for upcoming conferences. Remember, some of them have like pretty advanced things. That's how I usually missing the deadlines. Then last minute, I need to submit. So anyway, thanks. And for those who, I think we can conclude the stream, right, ladies? Yeah, we conclude the stream. And for you, if you want to chat, I will be here. There is still some food, drinks. There are, I guess, some more people who want to say something to you when you're going to eat and drink and chat. So thank you so much that you were listening to me for so long, and you didn't die, so you survived. I'm really happy about that. Thanks.